Okay. So again, my name is Jason Barnes, Chief Operations Officer here at Genesis, and joining me, I've got Jessica Pancoast, who is the head of our training and help desk team, and the main event today will be Dr. Dr. Davila, chiropractor, compliance officer, owner, founder of Custom Chiropractic Solutions, and he's going to be addressing us here in just a moment or two.
Can you hear me now? Jason.
Yes, sir. We can hear you now, Dr. D.
There we go. All right.
We're rocking and rolling.
Technology is cool until it's not. All right.
That's all right. Hey, welcome. Welcome. Hey, you'll notice it's been a few minutes, and I've yet to say anything disparaging.
10 minutes. We're 10 minutes out of schedule.
We're 10 minutes out of schedule. That's what I was about to say. Well, welcome. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Davila.
Oh, no problem at all. No problem at all. Here we go.
No, it's exciting to have you. Last week, we were able to show a lot of the people, over 30 folks who signed in, how our interface is going to work, how our process of choosing claims is going to work, and we're hoping that you could add to that today. And so we thank you for showing up. And as everyone knows, Dr. Davila, owner, founder of Custom Chiro Solutions, and a real friend to Genesis. We're real glad to have him on the call today, and I know many of our folks have utilized his services to gain some peace of mind, find some real direction in coding and billing situations. And again, we're real anxious to hear what he has to say regarding ICD-10. Now, awesome. Dr. John, I saw your screen for a second, then it went away.
I'm going to go ahead and share. Here we go. Make sure that you can see everything.
Yep.
And then we'll share the application so you can see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Excellent, excellent. Okay, great. No problem. Just making sure we can all get this correct. All right. So, listen, guys, here's how it works. And this is, there's two components to this. There's a component that works with this that says, what will they do for you? And I asked this question because I wanted to ask this of the older docs who have the system, who have been in practice for a couple of years, and I asked them this question. I said, when you first bought your program, whichever it was, BP or Genesis, what it is now, or if you bought another system beforehand or anything like that, the question I have for you is, what was actually in the system when you got it, meaning when it was all set for ICD-9? The answer is, well, just the billing codes, which is what they do. So really what we're trying to get accomplished today is to get people to understand that this whole process of what we're trying to do is nothing to do with the billing codes. Why? Because Genesis has a platform for you. And the reason why I say it when it comes down to the codes is because it has nothing to do with the codes. This conversation will have a little bit to do about history, a little bit to do about some of the codes that are out there, but from a different perspective than what you heard before, because when it comes down to it, it's not about the billing codes. And when I say that, I mean that sincerely, because Genesis has you covered. And when we get to this conversation about the codes, the truth is, we look at this and we go, okay, Paul the Octopus. You go, well, who in the world is Paul the Octopus? And I say, you remember the 2014 Men's World Cup? This octopus actually got 11 of 13 picks correct. So my question to you is this: what's harder, picking World Cup winners or actually picking a diagnosis code out of a book? Now, I'd assume that you're supposed to be 100% correct on your diagnosis coding. Therefore, your betting may be a little bit less than 100%. But even still, even an octopus got 11 of 13 correct just from falling on a box. So if the octopus got 11 of 13 correct, what does it take you to be able to pick the right code? And the reason why I say that is because it's not about picking the code. I'm going to show you in a few minutes. Genesis has already done that for you as far as, here are all the codes. You can pick from them all. It's not the problem. And this is where you need to understand where ICD-10 is truly coming. It has nothing to do with the codes at all because of a couple things. And let me give you a for instance why. Okay? The issue really comes back to high school algebra. I know some of you don't want to go back to high school, but unfortunately we're going to use high school algebra as part of our way back time machine. A couple of times they were going to get into the time machine, did the first time machine trip for us to go back into the past and say, okay, if you're in high school algebra, my question to you is, what is the slope of this given line? Now, if you were in high school algebra and you just answered the question minus 31, and you didn't do anything else, just gave the answer, what if you actually knew what the answer was? What would happen? What kind of credit would you get on the test? And the truth is, if you did, you would get this as an answer. You'd get 0 as a credit. Why would you get 0 credit? Because you needed to be able to show your work. Now, this is the part that's important, because what people don't realize is that the entire component that people need to worry about has everything to do about this one issue. ICD-10 is about this. It's not about the codes. You've been sold this idea of bait and switch. And this whole bait and switch thing is about everyone telling you, oh, if you don't use the right code, you're going to jail. If you don't do this, you're going to jail. The codes are about the codes, the codes, the codes. It's not about that at all. In fact, even Medicare came out and put out a release, a joint release with the AMA the other day. There were 4 points that they made in this release. I'm going to share the most important one with you because the rest of them really aren't that important. This one actually is. And this is question 2. And it says, what would happen if I use the wrong ICD-10 code? Will my claim be denied? Let me point a couple things out to you here. The first one is, for 12 months after implementation date, they will not deny the claim. So you're going to get paid. You're going to get paid. That's the funny part. You're going to get paid for a year, for 12 months. This is how they got the AMA to jump in bed with this whole idea of getting ICD-10 up and running. They're going to pay you no matter what, as long as the code is structurally correct. And Jen and I are going to talk about some structure in a few seconds, but the whole idea here is to get people to understand that they're not going to deny your payment. They're going to pay you. And here's the part that most people don't realize. As long as you have the valid claim, okay, they'll pay you. That doesn't stop them from asking you for other things. It is possible, they underlined the wrong word actually, the wrong sentence. It's possible a claim could be denied for other reasons. Now here's the best part. They don't need ICD-10 to deny your claims. It's just another thing. And once they deny your claims, if they deny your claims for medical necessity or deny your claim for something else, or for documentation or a profile, then they're going to ask you for this information to prove that you used the code correctly. This is the part where you must show your work. And even if you can't get it done correctly, here's the next thing, right? Even if you can't get it done correctly, they're still going to give you the ability to call them and say, hey, listen, can I get advance payment? So all this stuff that's out there, and some of the insurance companies are doing the same thing. They're going to give you the same type of process where they're going to give you some leeway at the very beginning. So even then, it's not a problem. So what is this all about then? Well, this is all about, in reality, about protecting yourself. You need a suit of armor to understand what it is in Medicare and these insurance companies are asking for. They are asking for you to prove the use of the code in your notes. They are not asking you to use the right code. Why? Because anyone could use the code. You can go online and get the codes. In fact, Genesis has their own code gem system where you can go ahead and translate your codes from 9s to 10s. That's the easy part. That's the easy part. The hard part is saying exactly what the documentation in your notes should say to prove the code. Here's a great example. Today you could talk about sprain strain. And most of you in your notes, you could talk about patient had a car accident, patient therefore had a sprain strain, and we move on. And no one, including PI companies, are going to complain about you saying car accident caused the patient to have a sprain strain in the cervical spine. No problem at all. Unfortunately, in ICD-10, you can't use the same set of macros to prove ICD-10 codes that you're using today after October 1st. Why? Because after October 1st, that sprain strain code that we're used to using now is actually splitting into 2 separate codes. For example, you'll have a sprain or a strain. And then once you have sprain or strain, the next component is going to be okay, proving the code. I'll show you in a few seconds how to do that, but just for an example, let's say it's a sprain. No problem at all. If it's a sprain, I must write down this connection. I must say the patient has a history of this accident. They have seen no one else. I'm the first person to use this code. The patient therefore has pain upon passive range of motion, which indicates ligamentous laxity, which shows that which proves the diagnosis of a sprain of the cervical spine is now applicable here. That is the connection. Unless you're taking those exact steps to write down exactly what you should be putting in ICD-10, we're going to fall short of proving the code. Why? Because the current way and the current state of the way we've documented ICD-9 didn't lead us to write down that much information because the codes were not that specific and didn't require this level of documentation. So the question is, how do we get there? What does it look like? The truth is, we have to start somewhere. And I'm going to give you a process by which you can start this. And this is also called how you do it, okay? How you move forward, what you're supposed to do. The truth is, I don't want to change the way you practice. Don't want you to change. People like your practice, okay? And I don't want you going in there and creating your own set of practice, your own set of macros, because here's what's going to happen. You're already bent for time. You're stressed for time. And then you're going to add extra work onto that. And when you add extra work onto that, it's going to slow you down. So what we want you to do is we want you to remain like a swan in your office. The patients come in, they like what you do, life is easy. They love the way your office works. They're in, they're out, you're quick, you're efficient. You don't have to wait long periods of time. All this happens, the doctor's seeing the patient. This process, like watching a swan cross the lake, would be considered to be graceful. And then from there, what we have here is that people don't realize that you have to really paddle to make it work. So here are a couple steps I want you to go through in order to understand how to paddle, okay? The first thing I want you to do is I want you to think about your care plan as a three-legged stool. You have to understand this is the process by which you create the transition from 9 to 10. The first thing you need to understand is, what are you selling? What are you selling? You have to write down what exactly it is that you're selling. The reason why is because there's three components to what you're selling that are all impacted by ICD-10. The first one is you need to understand what your medical necessity is. What is medical necessity? Why? Because for the first year, it's not about the code as far as the diagnosis code. It's about your profile. And if your medical necessity is incorrect, that will just increase the chances that they're going to ask you for this documentation. So you need to look at your care plan first and figure out, how many am I actually billing to insurance? How many, and if you're a cash practice, how many am I giving the patient for super bills for them to send to their insurance carrier? What is my medical necessity here? Once I create that, then I could look at what my coding is. What is my coding to prove active care versus wellness care? And then from there, here's the part most people aren't talking about. This is the part where no one's talking about the important component. How am I proving the use of that code? What is my documentation to support my coding, my medical necessity? Why do we need this? Because if they're not going to deny you for using the wrong code right away, what they will do later is they will come back and ask you, when you used X code, did you document it correctly to support the use of that code? And that's where the problem is going to be. This right here is going to be where the issue is with ICD-10 going forward. It's not the other two. The other two are to give you the idea of what you should be writing down. So when we put this together, really what ends up happening is the insurance company sees it no differently than what I would say Match.com. And when I say Match.com, I mean your claims must match what you send them. If they don't match, the insurance company might be upset. No different from, let's say some of us were on Match.com. We thought this is what we were going to get when we got there, but this is exactly what that other person looked like. We wouldn't be happy. Neither is Blue Cross, neither is Aetna, neither is Medicare, neither is Cigna when that happens. And if you think they need ICD-10 to deny you, the answer is they don't. They're going to see this process right here, and they're going to ask for money back. They're going to say, hey, wait a minute, I expected to see active care, and all I saw was wellness care. That doesn't make any sense. So they're going to deny either way, but they don't need ICD-10. When I say they don't need ICD-10, you can go back. You can look. You can go to my Facebook fan page. You go right here, Helping Chiropractors Do the Right Thing. and you'll see right here, the last quarter of last year, the error rate was already 79.4%, and this is before ICD-10. So the question I have for you, do they need ICD-10 to deny claims? The answer is no. They're already denying claims in the first place. They're just going to go ahead and ask you for documentation to prove its utilization. So you go, but John, well, why are they even doing this? Why even have this issue? And the answer is very simple. Because they can't stay the same. The codes are too old. They're not specific enough. And the technology has moved on. And in fact, when was ICD-9 introduced? Believe it or not, if you like big brick phones, you'll remember this year. It was 1988. That's when the last set of codes were installed. Now, knowing that things go forward and we need to improve our quality of documentation technology, obviously back then we didn't have to wear seatbelts. People wear seatbelts today, so things improve, things change, it's okay. But one of the things that we have to realize is that just because the codes actually change doesn't mean they're more crazy, because they're not, okay? Everyone's talking about how similar they are, how far apart they are. The truth is, even of the 15,000 ICD-9 codes, how many did you actually use? 15, 20? Now, to go over here and say, oh, now it's 70,000 codes, oh, the sky's falling. No, that's craziness. We're going to use the same number of codes. It's okay. In fact, if you go look at the structure of the book itself, you know, there's 340 pages for ICD-9 and 600 pages for ICD-10. The truth is that they both have the same region that we're dealing with, which is musculoskeletal. So that didn't get broken up into a million different pieces. So do yourself a favor. Relax. It's okay. I'm going to show you exactly how they're different, how they're the same, how to roll this out, what the structure is. And I want you to realize this. It's okay to be a little bit scared. It's all right. But don't buy into the fear of people going to jail, or even this. Don't even forward Facebook posts and tweets of, oh, what does a duck look like when they get hit by a ball, hit with a ball and it falls into an airplane and the plane goes down and it kills someone in a bus and that's the diagnosis code. No, that's not even good. No one's using those codes. That's just meant to go ahead and frustrate you to work to make you more fearful. No one's even utilizing those codes. So what do we have to do? So if we get all the fear out of the way, all the BS out of the way, and get down to exactly what the process is, there's really 3 or 4 main parts that we need to understand about the codes. And believe it or not, 50% of what you do is already done for you. So here's the first thing. You ready? The first thing is this. This is how we talk people off the ledge of worrying about this and getting down to really what they need to change. The first thing is this. How are they different? ICD-9 is all numbers. ICD-10 is alphanumeric, and the first character is always a letter. Wow, big deal. So if we look at N99.01, it's equal to 739.1. So we have one little simple thing there. The next thing that's out there is ICD-9, has 3 to 5 numbers. ICD-10 is 5 to 7 numbers. We'll call these actually characters. And one of the other things that are out there are going to be up to 7 characters, and some of them are also placeholders. You'll see these little X's. Okay? Very, very simple when it comes to code structure. The X is only when, you see this little A here, only when those were required, and that means that what we're looking for here is that the X is used as a placeholder. The codes as compared to ICD-9 are meant to be expanded. Now when I say expanded, what I mean is the government put out GEMS, and we'll talk about those in a few seconds, but GEMS are only written now. The codes are meant to expand, and I'll show you an instance where it's going to expand. But they're going to expand. And the reason why they're going to expand is because they know they didn't get them all the first time. So this time next year, the codes will change again, but the government will not put out another set of GEMS. Okay? So whatever the government put out now, this is it. You're going to be responsible next year to go ahead and research your codes again next year. All right? But when it requires a 7th character, and there's less than 6 characters, you're going to need to put an X just like this one here. T46.1X5A. I love this one, adverse effect of calcium channel blockers, a very, very common chiropractic code. And then T15.02XD, foreign binding the cornea, left eye, subsequent encounter, meaning another code that we're not really using in the future. Okay, so not chiropractic codes, but the idea is still there. Some of the codes will have X's in chiropractic land, but once again, not that big of a deal. X is just to make sure that this one letter stays in the 7th character. Very simple. Now, the other thing is ICD-9 has no laterality. ICD-10 does. And this is the first time when we start to see where the codes are inherently different. Okay? You have this thing called NOS, and then you have right and left. Okay? Once again, what if the patient has bilateral? Well, see, they didn't actually put in there. So this is one of the times that we may end up with an M54.3 something to somewhere down the line say that there's bilateral sciatica, which is totally possible. But this is one of the situations where we're actually missing something. Okay? Now, the other part is this, the NOS. NOS means not otherwise specified. And you'd say, but John, the patient has sciatica. It's in the right leg or left leg. I agree. But here's the issue. You see, in chiropractic land, it's a little different than it is in medical land. In medical land, the doctor writes the note, and then a coder walks in. Someone like Jennifer, we're going to talk with in a few seconds. Jennifer walks in, reads the doctor's note, and says, this is what you documented, this is what you qualified for, these are the codes you can actually use. In the chiropractic world, we basically do everything. Okay, we code, we wash dishes, we make dinner, we serve it, we're the maitre d', we adjust, we do everything in the office. So here, what happens is the NOS is meant because if the doctor said the patient had sciatica but didn't say right or left, the coder can't make that distinction. So in your documentation, in your exams, in your histories, you're going to have to start making sure you get as much history as possible to qualify to say either right or left. And this is what I mean when I say these codes are required, these codes require more documentation. We could just say sciatica. There was no right or left, and it was okay. We just showed it on a test somewhere. We could just say, yes, positive test for sciatica, moving on. And it wouldn't make a difference. In ICD-10, we can't continue the same process. It changes. So this laterality is just one of the components, okay? The next one is going to be encounters. In ICD-9, there was no encounter. In ICD-10, there is an encounter. But let me explain what this means. These characters, these final characters of encounters, only apply when you're asked to check the 7th character. These do not apply to all diagnosis codes. There is A, D, and S. A for initial, D for subsequent, and S for sequela. Jen's going to show you where in the system in our macros, where that goes in and give you an idea of how to work with that. But this issue here, I've heard people ask me, hey John, does this go on all codes? The answer is no. It only goes in the 7th character, and only in situations when we're dealing with some type of trauma. So let's take a big breath and relax. I've heard so many people worried about, well, does my subluxation code need to have these encounters on them? The answer is no. Your typical subluxation codes do not need this other information. Only the codes in our world where we're looking at S's, where this code right here has this character S is the majority of it in those types of injuries and traumas, not the typical subluxation code. Okay? So we can all just relax. I've heard people tell me, oh, my subluxations need all this, and my subluxation had this problem, and it's not true. All this worry about what was happening in the future actually never did happen. So where do we get this general equivalent mappings? The truth is, you get them free from Genesis. Not even free, you already paid for it. But there's people out there selling you these code conversions. Stop buying them. Genesis already did it for you. Don't buy it. You don't need it. In fact, the truth is, if we look at all your codes, the typical code you use of M99.01 or the typical code you use of 739, the truth of the matter is that these are one-for-one swaps. So when you go look at the codes at the modification of, the translation from ICD-9 to ICD-10, 739.1 to M99.01, the truth is, you ready, that in this situation, this one-for-one swap is ready to go. It's just an automatic swap. There's nothing to deal with. Because when we go to look at the code itself, we go look at the book, we look at M99.01, we know here, M99.01. Let me show you real quick what's happening here. If we just look at M99, it's 3 characters. The book says check for the 4th. Okay, great. We go to the 5th character. We go to 4 characters here. It says check for the 5th character. We go here. Does it ask to check for 6 or 7? The answer is no. There's nothing else to check for. These codes right here are complete. So check this out. 7 through 9.1, cervical somatic dysfunction, segmental somatic dysfunction. 7 through 9.2 is thoracic, lumbar, sacral, and pelvis. It's a great one-for-one swap. So half your diagnosis coding is done for you in a straight one-for-one swap. So just relax. People trying to sell you crazy stuff, you don't need it. You don't need conversion. Half your code's already done for you. In some situations, it may get a little bit more hairy, but in the very simple subluxation stuff, it's very simple. I'll show you what I mean. In this situation here, we're looking at ICD-9 code of a traumatic subluxation of an 839. When you plug this number in, it gives you, the gem will give you this. Okay? The conversion will give you the S13.101A. Okay? When you go look at this, you go search for it in the book, or either through that or through Genesis or through GEMS, you're going to find that that code is going to now require a level of subluxation. So this is one of the situations where it's an S code, meaning it's a trauma, and now we're going to go ahead and move forward into these S codes. So what happens is this. This is what the book looks like. You'll see here, right away we get to S13, and they're saying, got to check for the 7th, and here's your AD or S. And then we also have S13.1, 5, 6, 7. So we know this is going to require this AD or S. Okay? So now we go back in. We know we're looking at needing extra documentation here. So the first thing we're going to check on, the first thing I would tell you when it comes down to this are excludes 1 and excludes 2. Excludes 1 in this book means excluded totally, and excludes 2 really should have been includes. It makes sense. I mean, if you said traumatic rupture of the cervical disc and you said it was non-traumatic, these 2 codes wouldn't go together. Over here, if you said subluxation dislocation and there was also a fracture, these 2 would go together. Okay? So the quick version of this is excludes 1, don't use it together. Excludes 2, do use it together. But once again, these are very, very typical codes that we're not going to, typical situations we're probably not going to deal with a lot of in our chiropractic practice. Something to keep an eye on, but really not that big of a deal in the majority of what we do. Okay? So the next thing is AD or S, which Jen's going to talk about in a few seconds. She's going to show you exactly where to put it. And once again, this only goes in the 7th character. If someone's out there telling you that all your codes mean it's AD or S, do me a favor. Hang up the phone. Don't listen to them anymore. It doesn't work that way. Okay? They don't know what they're talking about. So let me take you forward. So now we're going to look at this code. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Here we have S13.100. Subluxation unspecified cervical vertebra. We don't want unspecified. Why? Because that means that we didn't do enough documentation. So we go forward into this. We're looking for S13.101A because the 100 doesn't work. And we know we're looking at an initial encounter maybe for as far as being the first time to go through this. And we get to S13.101A. And what does that tell us? Dislocation. Nope, we don't want that code either. We want to use a specific level. So now this is where you have to document. So in the past you would just write 839 cervical spine, no problem, as far as, strain cervical spine or traumatic subluxation cervical spine. In this situation here, the 839s, this is what's changed. Okay? What they're looking for is to actually say, okay, so we're looking for the 7th character, which is AD or S, and then they're looking for the specific level of vertebra. So we're going to have different codes. 0.120, 0.130, 0.140. In fact, even going further, 15, 16, 17. So all these codes are all going to be there, and we have to choose the correct one. This is the reason why what I'm talking to you about, it's all about the connection. That's the reason why I want you to see the connection going forward. It's not about picking the code. If you used your same old documentation and picked that code and didn't write down exactly what level you felt that was at, we would then have a problem in review when looking at the documentation. This must be connected. And the connection, if you have a pen, write this down. The connection specifically is the patient's condition tied to the patient's test, tied to the test outcome, tied to the diagnosis. That is the connection. So when we look at the new rules of diagnosis coding going forward, what we're talking about here is all your codes, they're not chosen. This isn't like when I was a kid and I went to a Chinese restaurant and they asked me, hey, what would you like for dinner? They handed me a menu. It wasn't a buffet. I had to say, okay, one from list A, one from list B, and one from list C, right? I wanted my soup, I wanted sweet and sour shrimp, and then I wanted, a fried ice cream, whatever it was that I wanted, okay? I had to have one from each, and that's what it was. That is not ICD-10. That is ICD-9. In ICD-10, the codes now are either exhibited, viewed, or reported. Exhibited meaning you got it from a test. Viewed meaning you got it off like an x-ray. Reported meaning it came off your intake form. All of your diagnosis codes, okay, all this process should be done for each code reported. This is the new standard. Do not just use check marks. This is what I mean by check marks. Let's say we had someone with an orthopedic test. We just said, oh yeah, positive SLR, positive Valsalvas. Patient has lumbar disc problem, which is very, very common in today's world. That is not exactly what happens next. What happens next is we go to lumbar disc and we say, okay, M51.2, and X means I'm not quite sure what to put there. So I go into M51.2 and I see, uh-oh, N51.24 is thoracic. N51.25 is thoracolumbar. 2.6 is lumbar, lumbosacral. Now I just can't write a positive check mark. I actually have to do something, which is write down why the test was positive. Do you now see why it's not about the code? It's about documenting exactly what you do. This is the reason why we have this great relationship with the people at Genesis, because they've provided all the stuff for you. What we've done is help you to understand what it is that you need to do as a doctor to be able to prove the utilization of these codes. Okay? So here's the step for you. This is what you need to do. This is the transition step. This is how you go from 9 to 10. This is what I would do if I were you. If you're behind it right now, what I would do is I would actually line out all of your ICD-9 codes that you're currently using. Then I would actually do a translation from 9 to 10. Write it in line. So 9s, using my 10s, and then from there, I would actually start out with how do I prove each code. This is what you need to do to go forward. This is what it's all about right here. This right here is the money shot. This right here is the important one. This stuff right here from 10 to 9 and 9 to 10, no big deal. This right here is where you're going to save your money, because that's the proving of the code itself. It's not about this. This is the easy part. This is the easy part. This right here is the part that's important. So, Jen, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Jen, why don't you go ahead and take people through that process of getting them back through to show them how that would work in our system. So I'll go ahead and give you control.
Sounds good. Let's see. Is there a trick to show on my screen? 'Cause it's not.
Yep, there is a small trick, Jen. You're just getting promoted. It'll take you a second. You should see it.
Thank you, Jason.
It's no problem. All right. So, Dr. D, while she's doing that, do you mind if I spout off a couple of questions to you that will be?
Sure, go ahead.
Is that all right? Because that might just take her a moment. And one question asked: will part, capital P, capital A, capital RT documentation be discussed today? I don't know if you want to address that today or not.
Part documentation as far as what to do next. I'll tell you what, if you want to go to my Facebook fan page, I actually have that in a webinar format. I'm doing a series of webinars for the ICA. Go to, we don't have time today. I mean, we could go through it, but it would take us 3 hours. Go to Helping Chiropractors Do the Right Thing on Facebook, and on there is a link to watch the webinar that we did for the ICA. There's one. There's 3 parts. We did one 2 weeks ago. There'll be one this Thursday, one next Thursday. So if you want to go ahead and register for those, I'll have those links up this week. But you can watch the old one, and the old one actually goes through that. And we're going to go through some more information this following Thursday. So that's where I would go to get that information.
All right. I'm just chatting to the person who asked that, and they raised their hand, kind of looking like they maybe had a follow-up question on that. So I'm just chatting him back. And a second question is, when we only use these S codes for personal injury or workman's comp?
Yeah, that's one of there's going to be a situation where you might use it for something else. It might be like in a work comp situation or personal injury situation. You might use it for someone who comes in general shift. Also, you might use it going forward in a situation where the patient is or had an old-time problem, and it's related to an injury, but it's not. She'll talk about the S for sequela, how that might happen later. But that's one of the situations that might happen. But yes, most of it is PI and comp. That is correct.
Okay. For that doctor that asked those questions, let us know if that answers them. But it does look like Jennifer has been able to share her screen, so we'd like to kind of turn it over to her. And he did say that it did answer his question, so thanks a lot, Dr. Davila. And unless there's anything else you wanted to share on the subject, it sounds like we're going to be turning it over to Jen.
Good, Jen.
Sounds good. All right, everybody. Hello. I'm going to go through how Genesis has made the ICD-10 conversion easier. I'm also going to show you how our documentation works inside Genesis and how we work with the system together. So today I just want to start off by just starting off with the day 1 note. So I'm going to go to Note Macros, Load Note Macro, Day 1. I have 6 options here. The first 3 are for cash insurance, and the last 3 are specific to Medicare. So we'll say our patient is a Medicare patient and we expect a full recovery, and then I'm going to hit replace. Our rule is for our macros, exam days, and day afters, we hit replace. Now there's nothing additional here we need to place in for subjective. For our subjective for day 1, we actually reference the patient's intake form. We have a very detailed intake form that's designed for the doctor to get as much detail from the patient up front, rather than being stuck in a consult room with them for 45 minutes talking about their 45 grandchildren. So our goal is to get the doctor into the consult room, be able to address specifically what's going on, and then be able to move them on to the exam room rather than being stuck in that transitional period. So I've done my subjective. I'm going to go right to objective. Under objective here, I have C1 cervical part T1. I'm just going to click on it and go to segment. This is where you're just going to click on and put on your segments where you found subluxation at. So you can come through and we can select our segments, turn them on, turn them off. What we're doing here is we're summarizing our exam findings. So orthos, neuros, range of motion, those details don't need to go into the system. What we do is we reference the exam form. One of the things that Dr. Davila was just talking about was making sure that if you have a positive Valsalva's, that you link it to the condition. We've actually done that in a different way, so I'll show you guys that in just a few minutes about how we've been able to link our exam findings to our conditions in just a second. One of the things I want to point out, we just had a question about part, is when we jump to our narrative, when you place in your segments where you found subluxation at, you actually get this entire paragraph that goes along with it. This is a part definition, so we define part for each segment, and we give you the supportive ICD-9 and ICD-10 code that goes along with it. So we've actually double-coded our notes because we realize that some carriers are not going to be prepared for ICD-10s, and we don't want that to be an excuse as to why your notes or your claims get denied. So if records are requested, we actually already have both codes listed in here for the first year. Under objective, we have our second line is our X-ray rationale. So in this case, it's defaulted back to cervical and lumbar. And then we have our Medicare oaths. I selected a Medicare day 1, so that's why it gives me Medicare oaths. This would be your PQRS qualifier. So I placed in my oaths score and my oaths goal. So oaths just stands for Outcome Assessment Tool Score. Every time a patient has an exam, you should be doing some kind of outcome assessment. That's it for your objective for day 1. So first visit in the office, that's it. Segments where subluxation was found, outcome assessment, score, and goal. Now I'm going to jump to assessment. So the way assessment works is we've actually built in our diagnosis code cheat sheet, our matrix, into Genesis. So for ICD-10, to code an ICD-10 claim, we would just go to Note Macros, Load Note Macro. I'll use Medicare. We have our Medicare diagnosis, and then I've laid out all of, I think I have 26 different conditions here. I think that's right, 26 or 21 different conditions here for Medicare. So what you're going to do is you're just going to select the patient's chief complaint, and then you would hit Add. And we give you the 4 ICD-10 codes we would recommend that you bill for this patient. And then come time to bill it, you can actually just push these claims up to the top, just like we have it for ICD-9s, where you can put in a code and it places it in up above. ICD-10s is built the same way in Genesis. So they've actually made it really simple and really easy for you guys to go ahead and bill your claims and get it set up. In fact, they even have a matrix where you can click on it, and if you're not sure what the code means, you can actually come in here and you can actually read what the definition of each of these codes are as well. And we can have favorites list. So there's a lot of really cool things that they've done with it. We've just shortcutted this for you, so instead of you having to go through here and create your favorites list or lay out your codes, we've already done it for you. Now, when we selected the Medicare diagnosis for neck pain, if I jump back here to objective, I want you guys to see something. It actually adds this one button here. So this is what actually links that exam finding or that patient statement in their intake to a condition. So let's click on it. I want you to see. So here's all the different cervical conditions that I have listed here. Each of them are actually linked directly to your diagnosis cheat list. The one that Dr. Davila has been talking about quite a bit is our AD and S modifiers, so that 7th digit extension where you would need the A, the D, or the S. I've built that into your condition. So if you have to choose between an A, a D, or an S, I go ahead and loaded it in here for you. So here under cervical sprain, if today was a patient's initial visit, their first time being seen for a cervical sprain, then we would go ahead and have the A, and you can select this button. If it's a D, and they were previously seen, let's say they were seen at a hospital or by a previous doctor, and they were seen for cervical sprains and they coded it, and then they come into our office, then that would technically be a D. This is where we need to make sure we're communicating with previous providers that the patient is seeing. And then the last would be a sequela. So this is a late effect, after effect of the patient's condition. So if we select these, actually I'll go ahead and select it, turn that one off. If I select this and I come down to the narrative, at the very, very bottom we have our sprain. So here it is, right here. So sprain of ligaments in the cervical spine, initial encounter, and then it gives us our code, and then the finding is reported pain upon passive range of motion of the cervical spine. So this is where we've linked your exam findings to an ICD-10 code, put the documentation in the system, and all you have to do is just select the right condition. And if you're not sure, hey, I really don't know what code I need to do to be able to say cervical sprain, come back, read the note, read the narrative, and we give it to you. One of the things I want to make sure I'm clear on with you guys is, I don't know if you guys remember quite a few years back, there used to be neuromuscular reeducation, and there's a lot of controversy of who can bill it, can chiropractors bill it, what actually is that code used for? Well, the 97112, the neuromuscular reeducation code, is actually defined as a code that you can use to help patient improve movement, balance, coordination, posture. Well, after the AMA went in and clarified and got really specific with the code, they actually came back and said that this is actually a code meant more for stroke patients. So even though the definition says one thing, we have clarification that's continuing to go on. This is the same thing with ICD-10. Our code book says that we can use an A if the patient was first seen for this condition. We can use a D if the patient was seen previously for this condition, like again at a hospital, and now they're coming back in, they're coming to see us for treatment. But we're getting still some talk that that's not necessarily how it's going to work. We're getting some talk that's stating that the D could be used for wellness care, could be used for patients who have had a condition that's been stabilized and now they're being seen for the same condition. So if they had a cervical sprain and then now they're being seen for that cervical sprain after it's been stabilized, then we possibly could use the D versus it being an active condition. So that's where I want you guys to be really hesitant with ICD-10s, making sure that you understand how to use each and every code, making sure you have a reliable source, and you're going back and finding out and reading the actual definitions, because some of these ICD-10 definitions of how these codes are going to be used is still in flex. So we need to make sure that we're up on it and we're taking care of and protecting ourselves by having the right information and the right documentation in our system. So in here, after we add in our condition, a link to our diagnosis codes, then actually that's all we have to do for assessment. So after you load in the ICD-10 codes, you're done. We can go right to plan. And here's our treatment plan. So I have a 3 to 4 region adjustment, 3 times a week for 4 weeks. Group wobble, 3 times a week for 4 weeks. Head weight biplate, and then cervical traction. If we need to change the frequency, we can. We just be able to select it. But everything's built right into the system for you. And only the blue buttons are the ones you need to be concerned about. And I've really made sure to walk you through and create a flow in your practice that makes it easy. So that way ICD-10s is not something that you're concerned about. It's just another day in the office on October 1st. You guys start and you guys keep rolling, and there's no loss of revenue by trying to figure out, hey, what codes do we need to bill, or what do we need to do? Is this unspecified? Can we use these 2 codes together? That's not an issue. We've already done all that legwork for you, built it into a macro to make it quick and easy. All right, so that is our ICD-10.
Hey, Jen.
Yes, sir.
Is it okay if I just ask one of the questions that the doctors had chatted in, and I'll just read it? Since it's not about the code and about the documentation, I'm led to believe – I'm sorry?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm led to believe that these codes are driven off an exam. So should we do a re-exam for all patients once they come in after October 1st, or should we just move forward and when they have a re-exam, come up with them then?
That's a great question. I guess it depends on your current level of documentation. I mean, this level of documentation isn't anything new. So if your current level of documentation isn't specific enough where you can be able to choose the correct code, then I would recommend doing an exam and updating your documentation so that way you can correctly choose a code versus going to an unspecified. And this really only applies to active care patients. For wellness care, again, the same level of medical necessity is not out there, so we don't have to worry about using active care codes during medical necessity. So my answer would really depend on your current level of documentation and how strong it is.
Okay. All right. If that doctor, can just type in that's sufficient enough, or if they're, have a follow-up question, let us know. Oh, and perfect.
Jason, I love Jennifer's answer to that because she is so good. The coding side of it's like, this is how it is. I love it. Yeah. That's like, you should have this information, and that's one of the things that I want to go ahead. I want to double up back on what Jen just said there. The idea of documentation, as far as how it works with the diagnosis coding. Medicare said numerous times, this should be the level of documentation that you have now. The only problem is that the majority of issues that we have documentation-wise, in reality, is that that's not the case. Because carriers for years and years have just sunk to the level of the code was so nonspecific they never asked for more documentation. So now it's time to face up to that the next step.
Got it. Okay, for a follow-up question, guys, or do you want to just keep going because we're almost out of time?
No, go ahead. I got a couple more slides to go ahead and show someone, and then we'll be good to go. Okay,
great. Regarding Medicare, how do we distinguish between the AT and then the GA/GY modifiers?
The answer is that ICD-10 has nothing to do with the CPT coding or the active care, wellness care. How you do it, how you show what's going on the procedure side. So that would still remain the same.
Okay.
So that's not going to change at all. So the fact you use AT or GA or GY has nothing to do with it. In fact, this is only diagnosis code. So if you had a AT and used it, you would just use the N99.01 with a secondary code like you would now. And if it was a GA, because you were sending it to a secondary, it would still be the same thing. And GY would still be a whatever subluxation secondary, unless you were in Florida, Puerto Rico, or the U.S. Virgin Islands if you're on the call. I just got to get that out there. Got to make sure I'm right. Anyway, so let me go ahead. So if people want more information, let me just go ahead and share a couple of things. What I want you to do right now is to realize that I want you to be very, very aware of the Lodi monster. There's the law of diminishing intent, which it also to me seems like the Cookie Monster, this lovely, cute, cookie-eating, furry thing. It's like, oh, I'll just deal with this later. So I don't want you to think about it this way. What I want you to do is this. I want you to realize that this is a process that you need to handle now. We are in the last 3 weeks of getting this handled, and if you are not prepared now, please understand this. What we just showed, what we've created and Jen just showed you, literally has taken us 18 months to actually perfect, just from the coding side of things. And then Jen has worked another, God knows, ungodly number of hours to go ahead and raw machine it into each individual system that we've created. So in Genesis, this has taken a ton of time. It does a lot of neat things, but you can't just go to sleep on this now. Just can't just go, oh, that's pretty cool, maybe I'll do something about it. And to be honest with you, you could use us, not use us, I really don't care. I just want you to realize that if you don't do something, this is what's going to happen. This Lodi monster is going to steal money from you, because come October 1st, if the codes are not correct, you may still get paid. That's totally cool. But if they ask you for documentation, it has to be there. It has to be there. And if it's not there, that's where we're going to have an issue down the road. It may not be right away, but come October 1st, if the codes aren't correct and you haven't paid and you haven't put them in correctly, you're going to have a problem. And if you did put them in and they're kind of correct, but you didn't document correctly, they will come back to you later. Okay, so I just want you to know, don't be lazy. Please don't just quit on this, say, I'll deal with it next week, because there is no next week. We are at the point now. So for me, what I want to do is this. If you really, really want to find out about our information, you want to do more about it, just contact us. You email us at info@customtowersolutions.com. If you email us today, we have a $500 discount we'll offer you today on our program if you email us today. Don't email us tomorrow. We really don't even have time to be able to do this for everyone. As far as if every one of your clients called us today and said we need it right now, I couldn't get to everyone by October 1st. It's impossible. But the first people that email us, we can try and work you into our schedule. $500 discount if you email us today. So I just want you to know we want to help you, and we have the ability to help you make it real easy. We can really make this process really, really simple, and hopefully that helps. So, Jason, thank you so much for having us.
No,
anybody else have any other questions? I see that one from yeah. Okay. No other questions?
Yep, she's got it. I think that was it. There are no other questions. Yep, and Ashley seems to have her head wrapped around this one now, which is fantastic. Guys, thank you so much. I hope you had as much fun as I did.
I did.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jen and Dr. John, guys. Have a great day, and we'll forward any requests we get over to you guys.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Bye now.